I think what I want to pull on a little bit here, and Mark, and invite your voice in to help me sort this out. Is that I heard a little bit about this. So there's not enough black therapists to begin with.
No.
To and that there's an institutional barrier there in some that you named as that also qualify for licensure in the state. And then if you get at the history of licensure and why that came about, how that came about, and who got to play, and how those rules have evolved over time, you'll begin to see that there is a structure, an architecture in there that demands the outcome that we see. The system isn't broken; the system is designed. So that's the piece of it. And then if I do get licensed, well then the one of the things I have to do is get thoroughly immersed in the Western model and commit to producing the Western result with the Western methods, with the Western billables. If you want to get paid for it, doing that body of work after without any question of whether you will bring any of the stuff they don't teach in the Western world to the table in the first place, if we don't bring your signature strength. So these are the structural issues that we're trying to dance around, and I just wanted to name that so that we know that we're dancing around a thing as opposed to everything's working perfectly and we just can't get it together. That is not the situation.
Yes. Well stated there. Well stated there, Brother. Absolutely.
Mark, you got a word on that?
Well, yeah. From my understanding, in this country, only 4% of psychologists are Black and 1% of Black men. And quite often, people are taught a Eurocentric way of thinking and being when it comes to partnering with their clients, and so the model does not affirm our culture, our history. There's a spiritual principle in South Africa called Ubuntu. I am because we are. And so the focus is on community and family and spirituality. But quite often in this country, we're focused on the individual alone. And in my opinion, there needs to be a paradigm shift in the way that we go about the whole process of therapy. I believe that anything constructed can be deconstructed. And so I think we need to dismantle the system the way it is, because in my opinion, it was not designed for our liberation or our transformation.
Oh, yeah, you just said a lot, brother. Not designed for our liberation or transformation, which is to say, not designed for us to thrive. Which you got to hear that in 2026 we are living in an environment that is structurally designed with great architecture based on decades and decades, maybe even more lineage of time to perfect the thing, such that it renders us in this condition. That's the design of the system. And when we know that, then we know we're not crazy. So, about the mental health thing, you know what I'm saying? So the frame even starts to come loose a little bit, because it's not that I lack health at a certain level. It's that I am a healthy individual and I am in a context that is hostile to this system thriving. Now, when you say you want to, it's more than beyond the Black. I want to go here just for a second. Beyond having a Black therapist, because you want to have a Black therapist who's rooted in their experience, who's rooted in their in the knowledge of the collective experience, who has felt sense stakes in the proposition of thriving in the face of the structural misalignment. Like, they gotta first come from there. Hey, I understand what you're going through. You work in this system that's working against you, and this is the baddest system ever devised in human history. This is America.
That's a powerful point. If I may, Dr. Robson, it goes back to the very foundation of what's taught in quote unquote mental health and psychology and responsive therapy. None of it features any of our great architects of mental health and wellness and psychology. There's no talk of Francis Sumner or any of the other folks there, and Welsing and so on, or the Dr. Horace Mann Vaughan, as I talked about. You learn about it you used to start with Freud, and you work through Carl Jung, and you work through Adler, and so many of the others there, Maslow, all brilliant men in their own right, but a lot of times some of these folks were not considering our plight, what was going on in our world, in our community. Only later would you see folks along the lines of Cole Rogers who might consider what's going on in the African American world or Latino population, what's going on with the Native American. But they simply ignored the very existence of our mental health and well-being being a factor in our overall health there, much less those who belong to the fabric of civilization and the diaspora, as it would be, and the contributions of our culture to all of mankind, and how it was relegated to mere history. And I would say misappropriated history often, right? They adopted the pieces they wanted to adopt in our very books and study, because history is fundamentally important to mental health and how it is laid out and how it's taught. And so how can you have the pillars, the necessary to build an individual who is suffering from mental health if they don't have anything but the negative history, and they only know about transatlantic slavery and for years Columbus discovered America, etc., versus the truth and the real history that we were in America all along, right? Without understanding that the DNA that has proven, as far as cultural responsibility, the very DNA of this entire planet starts in West Africa, as a Nobel Swiss scientist found, which I think it's shocking when we have the science and the history to talk about the very roots of our civilization and not show the honor that is due to our history and bringing that into what is called culturally responsive therapy.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. I also wanted to just add briefly, it would benefit brothers to know about people like Dr. Joseph Wilson, Dr. Amos Wilson, Naeem Akbar, Joy DeGree, B.B. Moore Campbell, Queen Afua. We have our own heroes and sheroes, and that's who we should be learning from. And their books and their articles should be in the room when we sit down with the culturally responsive therapist. And if we're not aware, that information should be given to us so we can study and learn about how this all began, so we can begin the process of healing from an African-centric perspective.
Now, Mark, let me ask: was that, pardon me, was that knowledge of those authors, heroes and sheroes, was that given to you as a child, or was it something you arrived at in your adult life? Was that built into your family structure?
It was not, and today it can be part of our ecosystem from the very beginning. So that's the challenge that we have, is to teach the young about the men and women who came before us, who laid a path towards healing.
I ask that because it's so critical with what's going on, as you talked about, Dr. Marcus, with 2026. They're pulling the books that relate to our history or our authors, right? They're essentially washing them off the shelves, out of the curriculum in elementary, high school, universities, graduate level, right? So if those those basics that have been around forever that talk about our stories are being taken out. How do we get to what Mr. Markle, as an educator and author, is talking about, unless we start in the home and we get those necessary tools for our own culture and understanding and learning and healing, right? And I think that's a powerful point you make there, Mark.
Mark and Ed, you both are